Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to Jeff's Just Having Fun. I guess I'm having fun. I was going to be showing you a video today about my two tractors. They're rather different and kind of interesting, but what I'm having fun with today is my 1951 Willys Jeep. I've owned this Jeep for over 30 years and have done a complete restoration on it. The engine was overhauled 25 years ago, and even though I've used the Jeep fairly regularly, the engine the other day started to run really rough, and I figured it had a stuck valve. I did a compression test on all the cylinders, and indeed it turned out number 3 had no compression. Had a stuck exhaust valve. Tried to make a tool to knock the valve back down, but it was really stuck, and so I figured I needed to pull the head. And so in pulling the head, that was really quite a chore. I ended up using wedges, pry bars with wedge-shaped ends, screwdrivers, anything I could do to get that head to release from the block. I thought maybe they'd use Permatex to put the head on, but that was not the case. Turns out all those studs here on the engine had slightly rusted themselves to the head, and that was what was holding it up. So what I did was I finally got the head off. It was quite a battle, but we got it off, and I've cleaned the head. I've rethreaded all those studs. I didn't want to try to pull the studs because I was afraid I'd break one off, but this number 3 exhaust valve here was the one that was stuck, and the way I freed it was I lubricated it real liberally with Croil, which is a really great penetrating oil. And I took a dead blow hammer, this one, and rather than hit the valve itself, I just set the hammer on top of the valve like that, and then hit the hammer, the top of this hammer. And eventually, after the valve had sat for a day or so with Croil, we were able to get that knocked back down, and it went down. And as I roll the motor over by hand, the valve is functioning properly now. So anyway, what I've done since then is I've removed the head, and you can see it here. I'm going to be chasing all those holes with these mounting holes with what are called bore brushes, and I bought a set of those. I'm going to clean those out, and then on the flip side, I bought a stud cleaning tool, which is basically a ring with wire bristles in it, and it fits down over the stud. It has a handle with a mount for a drill, and you can just spin it all the way down and clean these up. And so once that's done, I'm going to put the new head gasket on it, and new thermostat housing gasket, that sort of thing. I'm going to use an engine assembly lube on all of these for two reasons. It'll be to make it so the head pretty much just drops on easily, but also it'll protect these from trying to bond themselves to the head in the future. And I'm really hoping that's going to go easily. Now this engine, interesting enough, is not the original engine to this Jeep. This engine is actually a 1943 World War II engine. That's a nickel alloy block. It's basically bulletproof. It's as hard as diamonds. I was so afraid I was going to scar the metal prying that head off, but it didn't hurt the deck at all. In fact, the head is fine too. And apparently what happened in the old days with these Jeeps was that, you know, the original engines probably lasted 40 to 45,000 miles. And back in the 50s, early 50s, if you needed engine repair or needed a new engine, you had an option of going down to the surplus store and picking up a surplus World War II engine brand new in the crate for very little money, probably $10 or $20 back then. And I think that's what the case was with this Jeep, was its original engine got replaced with this World War II version, which is virtually the same thing. It does have some, you know, a little bit of aesthetic differences in that, but it's still the same 134 Go Devil engine, as they called it. This engine always ran really great. After I did have it overhauled professionally, as I mentioned, and that was because when I found this Jeep, it was pushed up against a fence at a rancher's place with a for sale sign, and I was riding by on my motorcycle one day and saw this thing, and the sign said for sale, $600. And the Jeep was painted in greenhouse paint. They'd painted it with a brush. It had Pontiac seats in it. It had Ford wheels with snow tires. And so I inquired, and the fellow said, yeah, it runs, but it knocks. He says, don't push it too hard. So I started it. It started right up, and it didn't really knock at idle at all until I gave it a little bit of throttle, and then you could really hear it. Drove it around slowly, tested the four-wheel drive and the high-low and all that. That worked fine. But I knew the engine was not well. So I ended up buying it and taking it home, and a friend of mine and I tore this thing completely down to the ground. The body went off to an acid dip tank. The engine went to an overhaul shop. The chassis went with my friend, who's a professional welder in the aerospace industry, and he and some of his work buddies got together and repaired all the damage to the frame. It had 5 cracks in the frame, all at the shackle points, and they sandblasted it, primed it, painted it a nice satin black, and he brought it back. And about that time, the body had come back from the acid dip tank. The body, as you can see, is really straight, has no rust at all. It came back shiny like a new nickel, and of course it wanted to flash rust right away, so we primed the body and set it aside till the engine could be installed. And at one point in time, all I had in my garage were the 2 axles and the transfer case. And when the engine finally came back, we started reassembling the chassis. I found some original wheels. I bought the tires and tubes from Coker Tire. Not sponsored, but that's where I could get the original non-directional tread. And we began assembling the Jeep back together. I ended up having to buy some used seat frames. I got new canvas seat and covers and foam. It never had a back seat in it. The knockouts were still in the floor, so it never had a back seat, but I knocked those out and got a back seat frame and cushions and put that together. So we've tried to put the Jeep back to the way it was, pretty much originally from the factory. This is a factory color, although I don't believe it's correct for 1951. This is called Luzon Red, and but I like the color. We put it together with a lot of hardener, so this paint is really, really tough, and it's held up for the last 30 years just great. I've used this Jeep in parades and just for fun and driving around, and it hardly has a chip in it. So we put the Jeep back together. I bought a new wiring harness for it, which is the correct canvas covered wiring harness, and got all that back together. I am running it though at 12 volts. The ancillary parts of it, like the light bulbs, the coil, things like that, have all been upgraded to 12 volt. The starter is still the 6 volt starter, and when you turn this thing over, it spins like a new Toyota. I mean, it just really spins this motor over fast. And that doesn't hurt anything because the wiring is heavier gauge than 12 volt. The starter can certainly take it. The engine starts so quickly that the starter doesn't even get warm. Plenty of good cooling. I've never had any overheating problems with this Jeep. It's just runs like a top. Up until just about a month ago when it didn't, and it was that stuck exhaust valve. So anyway, we've gotten this thing all back together years and years ago. I've enjoyed it immensely until just recently. But this is where we are today, and what I'm going to do is chase these bore holes in this head, and I'm going to likewise chase all these studs with a stud cleaning tool and get it put back together. These Jeeps are a lot of fun to work on. They're not cheap anymore. Unfortunately, I think you can still find them out there relatively cheaply, but certainly not for $600 or $800 that I paid for this one. I would say maybe I've got $4,000 into the Jeep total for all the parts I had to buy and the paint and whatnot, but I've certainly gotten my money's worth out of it over this length of time. But as you can see, I like to work on lots of different things, and truly I was going to do a video on these two tractors, But that'll have to wait till next time. I'm in the middle of this, but hopefully here in the next couple of days I'll get the head back on. I just want to do this reconditioning of these parts today. One thing I want to do with this valve here, or actually with all the valves, is I'm waiting on a couple of bottles of Marvel Mystery Oil, and when that comes in, I'm going to rotate the motor by hand. Once each valve opens up, I'm going to liberally coat inside each valve with Marvel Mystery Oil, rotate it again, let that sit for a few days, and then what I'll do is thoroughly clean everything, get my new head gasket back on, and I'm going to coat that with copper spray paint just to make sure everything seals up really well. And I won't show you that because that's pretty basic, you know, just pop it on, put the head on, torque it down, put all this stuff back on, back together. And hopefully next time when I do a video, which hopefully won't be quite so long of a period of time, I'll show you this Jeep running and driving and show you how well it's doing. I'll do a compression test on each cylinder. You know, these two, when I tested these were both at 115. This one was at 0. This one was at 110. So those are really healthy numbers for these old flathead 4-cylinder motors. And like I said, it did run really great just until it didn't. So anyway, that's it for now. I could show you my tools here briefly that I'm going to be using. I didn't really know these kinds of things existed, but these are the bore brushes. They just go into your drill. They're different size diameters, and you can just drill them, you know, clean out a bore. And this kit here was something I discovered on Amazon, and these are the ring type stud cleaners. Basically, this goes over the stud, this goes into the handle, and then you have the drive for your drill, and you basically just spin these up and down the stud. You can use them on wheel studs, engine studs like these. The stud goes up inside of here as this is spinning around, and hopefully that'll really clean things up. So anyway, that's it for now. Just wanted to share this little bit of action with you, and hopefully you found my discovery of these tools interesting, and maybe even some of the trials and tribulations I've had with this old Jeep motor. It's hard to believe this engine is 82 years old, and the Jeep itself is 74 years old. But still a lot of fun. Great hobby project, and doesn't have to cost a lot of money, especially if you're willing to get your hands dirty. Anyway, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. I'll be back soon. Bye-bye.